Hey, Frank,
Howdy.
we have evolved from doing one-off videos to rolling out our first mini-series season of brand and strategy videos. And the
Yeah.
first season is going to be about building a brand and like the essentials of that. Why is this
Yeah.
a topic that is so important?
Season one, episode one. Yeah. So, well, we make these videos to try and, add value and see where value has been added. And I thought something that was interesting as we were thinking of like, hey, what do we, keep sharing on these videos was kind of like how content can feel disconnect. Like even for me, as much as we try to have, try to learn from basically what we've read and learned in the past, we still look for information and new sources of knowledge. And especially as things change, how do we look for that? And one of the things I noticed was like, oh, these are, whether you're on Twitter or LinkedIn or just looking on blogs or reading books, maybe not necessarily with books because books are a little bit more comprehensive, but content can be really strong, but it's also disconnected because it's seen in such siloed areas.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what if instead of just talking about one thing at a time, we kind of loop together a series that really covers how we would take a brand and work with them to build their own brand. Like, what are we doing sequentially? A big part of our model is system. How do we work through a system that makes sure you kind of like uncover all rocks, that every stone is unturned, and make sure that you build something a little bit more sequential? So I was like, well, why don't we do a series? So if someone's interested, they can hop online and check out each video, and hopefully it's a little bit more helpful in building some comprehensive ideas versus just one-off thoughts. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you have thoughts on that.
I like that. And like you've said, like it's building blocks. There's foundational things that you need to get right before you dive into the more complex pieces. And I think today's conversation around purpose and vision is going to be really good.
Yeah.
Because it's like that you don't understand your purpose and where you want to go, like you're not going to get anywhere. So I guess I'll dive in a little bit more. If you had to like answer the question, why a series on building a brand and what does that all entail?
Yeah.
I know we've kind of already talked about it, but like why and like what are we going to talk about in this series?
Sure. Yeah, well, yeah, certainly the why is like, looping everything together, having that sequential order. And I think the reason it's important to start from the top and not necessarily in the middle is because when it comes to building a brand, everything works backwards, or it should. And that goes for marketing, that goes for business. Everything you do should tie back to a certain point, right? Like that's the ideal, is that you're starting with this kind of inner understanding, this core understanding of who you are. And so really that's the idea of looping these together in a bit more of a series format. Some of the elements I think that we're going to cover ideally is we'll talk about purpose and vision. And so we'll probably cover more of that today. We'll talk about then identity, like brand identity, what that means, your category, as well as your revenue and goals associated with that. So what are the actual metrics you need to hit as a brand? And then, more traditional stuff, positioning and point of view, messaging, and then as well as like marketing tactics. How do you build a brand? Once you've established the idea, how do you then take action to make sure you're actually building it up and taking value out of it? So yeah, I hope that, we'll probably cover a few more things here and there. Maybe those will switch order, but generally that's the order of brand building, and that's how we work with clients. And so it's no secret. So I was like, well, why don't we talk about it and hopefully make some valuable content out of it?
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you which one is the most important, but I feel like we're going to talk about that anyways today. So why start with your brand purpose and vision?
Yeah. And there is an answer to that. I think that, well, everything is equally important, but there's certainly a more important place to start.
Yeah. Which one's your favorite child?
Yes.
No,
purpose and vision. So this is not, revolutionary thinking, but I do actually see that this is not necessarily taken as significantly maybe as it should be when it comes to building a brand, because brand is very external. In fact, by definition, it's kind of like, Marty Neumeier, it's what they say it is, not what you say it is. But at the same time, you influence that. So how do you influence that? And that starts with your brand purpose and vision. And really, in a nutshell, brand purpose and vision it's the foundational belief about your company's existence, reason for existing, and its place in the world, right? Why do we exist? I know Simon Sinek has focused a lot on that. And I think those principles are excellent. And really this is that like mission level of the brand to a certain extent, right? Like it's timeless, it's ongoing. And even as your business changes and shifts and moves to different categories or products or even positioning, whatever it is, as it grows and evolves, this is pretty core to that. This is less changing, might change slightly over time, but mostly it's going to stay pretty consistent, and everything you do should tie back to it. It has to tie back to it if you're going to build a successful brand. So yeah, I don't know if you have much to add. I know we've talked about that a ton for our own company, but
yeah, well, and one of the things that like we keep using the phrase building a brand, and this obviously is about brand building, but it doesn't mean that you're starting from scratch as a company.
Yeah.
Some of the clients that we've worked with have been around for for decades. They maybe are a family-owned company, but they still don't have a brand purpose and vision. They just happen to be successful. And that in today's market is not going to last. Whether that's your how people view you, how your employees view you. People need to understand why you're there and what you're going to do about it. And so it's not just for new companies. Sometimes it's a brand that doesn't have a brand purpose and vision is still a brand. People still perceive it a certain way. So having this discussion and having it outlined is still really important, whether you're a startup or you're a 100-year-old company. You need to have this.
100%. Yeah. And it's funny because it's not an elusive concept, or at least it shouldn't be. I know certain companies maybe more traditionally treated like that, but like you just said, it helps in decision making. Companies can still, I think we'd be wrong if we said, hey, you couldn't be successful if you didn't have this, but it's likely that it could be a lot more expensive, a lot more stressful. Your direction is a lot more confusing, because if you don't really know, okay, this is exactly where we're going and exactly where we need to head, then you're going to have a much harder time making decisions about where to invest. Do we take on these products or not? Do we do this or not? How do we, there's a ton of decisions to be made, and that's all off of your purpose and vision, all of the things you want to accomplish. So your employees are going to be more engaged. I know that I'm a more engaged employee because I know where we're headed. So I don't have to be told every single time, here's what you need to do. I generally can see the end and say, well, I can ideate on my own. How can I influence that? How can I add more to that? Because I know the purpose and direction and the vision of the company. So yeah, certainly critical. It's definitely the starting point, I think.
I agree. It's what can inspire your brand for customers and for your employees. And I know we were just talking about our mission statement too, and how it's almost like a principle. I mean, it is a principle. And your purpose and your vision is who you are and why you do what you do, and your mission is the lens you look at to make decisions. And I don't know, but going back, I guess, to brand purpose and vision, like, how do brands identify that? How do they figure it out?
Yeah, it's definitely harder, because at the end of the day, most people get into work to make money, and that's not, that's not a bad thing. It's how the world goes around. It's a good thing. It's very necessary to a certain extent. But beyond that, people, both in a consumer market and a business market, require more than that. Everyone's aware of that. Everyone's aware that brands are, businesses exist to make money. But even more than that, it's you can ask yourself a couple questions, and it's not complex in that way. It's simple to start. Now, figuring out what that is may be harder and take some time, and you need to figure that out. But even answering questions like, why does your business exist beyond money, right? What is your place in that? What do you want to be known for? We'll talk to a lot of companies, and if you don't really know what you want, if there's no aspiration to your business, the question only becomes, well, where's the most money? Where's the most opportunity? If you're only being able to ask yourself that question, you're gonna have a lot of difficulty making decisions, because it's like, there's the canvas is too blank, right? So you need to know, what do you want to be known for? What are your aspirations? What do you want to identify with? And then I know another one that's done really well is like, where do you start long term? Where do you want your business to be in 10 to 15 years? And then you can scale back from there. Well, what do you need to do in 5 to 7 years to get closer? What about 3 to 5 or 1 to 3, right? So yeah, just thinking along those. Again, why does your business exist outside of money or beyond money? What do you want to be known for? And then, what do you want your business to look like in the long term? And what does it look like scaling up to that? You may have some more too, but yeah, those have definitely been helpful ones for me to ask.
Yeah, I think those are really important. And one of the things that I like about those questions is that they almost take the market out of, like, not the market, but they take the money out of the equation. And so if the money wasn't in it, and like then that becomes a real philosophical question. And it can help you look at things so differently and be creative in how you accomplish your vision and your purpose.
Totally.
We do that a lot, and like it's changed how we even like what our revenue streams look like and how our business and organization is structured. And it's taken us away from just, oh, we need to have this much profit margin on this much work with this many hours. Like, that's stupid.
It's an interesting concept, because it's like, I don't know if catch-22 is the right word. Maybe it is like, I think sharing these types of things from a business perspective, it's not measurable in the sense of like, oh, it's not a KPI and it's not a bottom line factor. But at the same time, it's the thing that influences that better. And they're not mutually exclusive in the sense where if you really focus on purpose and vision, you're not going to focus on revenue. I mean, for those watching, Amanda and I talk about our revenue goals all the time, and it's a very strategic conversation, and we're very focused on those things. But this just sets the direction for that, sets the precedent or cornerstone. It's more so the reason we get excited to even work on that here in this context. Why do we get out of bed in the morning? I know Tyler has said that before. That's the level you need to start with. All the rest of the things, like I said, kind of the third or fourth element we're going to talk about here is like revenue and growth in this series. Those things are critically important to get there. But first, you have to have your purpose and your vision laid out to set the direction in which you're going to work in. So absolutely.
And I think if you don't do that and you make it about the money, then in 10 years, you're going to find yourself in a job you hate.
Yeah. And you're not going to have a point of view, like our market any market at this point is so saturated. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be hundreds of ideas again coming in the next, 10 to 20 years, but you kind of have to have your own thing, right? If you don't, you're just going to get, again, the canvas is way too blank. If you don't have a direction, if you don't have a point of view on something, you don't really have a brand. You just have kind of this existing business that's fighting for scraps here and there, wherever they come. And that's not a brand. There's no direction there. So purpose and vision, critically important. One last thing I would add, I think you mentioned it before, is that who this pertains to. This isn't just for a startup environment in a sense where startups absolutely need to start there. Like if you're starting from scratch, the series is hopefully kind of like, hey, follow this step 1, step 2, step 3. But even for someone who's been around a long time, that's not something you have it written on a piece of paper, stashed in a file cabinet somewhere, revisit that, make sure it currently represents where you do want to go. Or maybe it was created at a time where there wasn't really a clear vision for the company. Even if you're an enterprise level company, revisit that and make sure it's clear, and then make sure it aligns with that and is impactful. And what we mean by that is that people think about it on a daily basis. They make decisions about it on a daily basis, right? Yeah. We've seen mission statements or purpose and vision statements that are like 2 paragraphs long. Maybe that works, but in our experience, have something that people can latch onto, a mindset that they can create. Like you said earlier, it's really philosophical. It's a mindset you use for decision making.
And even like driving that home a little bit more, if you're a department manager in a huge corporation and you don't have any control over the brand purpose and vision, you still have the control of the purpose and vision of your team, and the reputation that you want to set. And so, I've led marketing teams too. And sometimes you don't have, you might not be at that level where you make strategic decisions about an organization, but you really can represent your company and your team. And it's still good to go through those exercises and to have that big picture thinking, because then you make smarter decisions and more strategic things, do more strategic things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great insight. That's brilliant. And I'm sure that's the case for all. Unfortunately, I'm sure that's the case for a ton of people. So yeah, that's brilliant insight.
Absolutely. Well, Frank, this was awesome. Season 1, episode 1.
Hopefully, we chat about it. I think it's valuable. I know it's helped us as a company. So if it can help anyone, great.
Absolutely. Well, I'll see you later.
Yeah. Thanks for your time. Talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.